Like Alberto and Martin, I'd like to extend my thanks to Bankinter for inviting me here from Chicago to speak at this event. I'm very excited. Normally, during these presentations, I say what Martin did. So, what he said, all right, and then I'll do my presentation. I wanted to talk a little bit about our Accenture Technology Labs and our technology vision and how cloud fits into that. And then I'd like to spend a little bit of time just addressing some of the roadblocks or challenges or potholes that we found in adoption of cloud computing. I just want to go on record saying I totally believe in cloud computing. I spend most of my time talking about it. I love this stuff. It's my life. But you have to go into it eyes wide open. So I just want to talk about some of the enterprise challenges that we found and maybe talk a little bit about how we've addressed those. So, just a quick introduction of Accenture Technology Labs. People may know Accenture, but very few people, sometimes even with Accenture, know about the Accenture Technology Labs. We're a relatively small organization for a company the size of Accenture, about 180 people spread across 4 locations. You see it on the map down there. And we're responsible for generating Accenture's technology vision. It's a rolling 5-year vision where we take 150, 200 individual technologies. We synthesize where those technologies are going. We try to build up a few key trends that we think are going to be important for our clients and for ourselves. We have researchers, roughly 1/3 PhDs in our organization, who have to look at these ideas and build conceptual prototypes. Think of it as concept cars of emerging technology. So taking those innovations coming out of corporate labs and academia, which I mentioned some of the universities, and building up the concept cars and showing what those technologies may mean for our customers or for ourselves. We have a development group that, to extend the analogy a little bit further, will put an engine and a transmission in that concept car and drive it the first couple races. And we actually go out to clients and take these innovations to our clients and try them in real production facilities. From an innovator's perspective, nothing keeps you more honest than having to apply your innovation at a real client and try to make it work. So that's a very useful exercise for us. Other parts of Accenture can do the solution industrialization and the large-scale scale-up, but that's a little bit of what we do in labs. Silicon Valley, obviously, for obvious reasons, given the amount of innovation going on there. Sophia Antipolis in the south of France, what I like to refer to as the hardship assignment of the labs. I think they're about 10 kilometers away from Cannes. Terrible place to have a lab. I really feel sorry for them. Bangalore, where a lot of our systems integration work is done, and then finally Chicago, more or less the ancestral home of the labs. Actually opening up a 5th lab outside of Washington, D.C., focusing on cybersecurity any month now, if I am to read the reports correctly. So when I talk about our technology vision, these are the 7 trends that we've identified, at least for 2010 through 2015, and occupying the #1 slot, as it has for the past couple of years, is cloud computing. We look at new technologies evolving in the web, new devices functioning as doorways into this massive pool of compute and data that we see out there, collaboration taking center stage in business processes, this whole idea of social networking and how your customers interact with one another, maybe not necessarily with you, but certainly interacting with one another. This rise of real-time business integration, and how you build systems for all this. That, in a nutshell, is our technology vision. But it all starts with cloud computing, so maybe I'll start a little bit with that. So I love Amazon. I'll say that again. They've got some great engineers. But for any engineer, we all have a hero, and in my case, that engineer is Dilbert. And it just so happens that Dilbert has something to say about cloud, and I'll let everybody read that really fast. Mordoc is surprisingly prevalent in IT these days. I spend a lot of my time explaining to people how encryption works, and that's depressing to me. But the fact of the matter is there is a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt out there. You have a lot of people making some fairly outlandish claims about cloud, both pro and con. It seems that every product out there these days somehow magically has been transformed into a cloud product, seemingly without effort. And this is a challenge for people that are trying to actually do some work in the space because the hype is starting to outpace the reality. Cloud is an incredibly attractive tool to use to solve business problems. And I like what Martin said about the agility and new business capabilities. We're starting to see companies be able to address problems they've never been able to address before. Smaller companies acting like larger companies, a degree of nimbleness and innovation, which is very exciting. So that's all very good. People have asked me, okay, so what's Accenture going to do in this space? Isn't this going to mean the end of systems integration companies? Shouldn't Accenture be shorted? And I'd say no. If we look across things like infrastructure as a service, apps as a service, business process, and new services markets, cloud is a tremendous tool for us because it allows us to provide value to clients at a lower cost to serve. It allows us to address problems that we've not been able to address before. We're implementing things like SaaS. We're doing replatforming of legacy applications. We're starting to launch new businesses based on cloud. One that I'm working on right now is actually being built on top of Amazon Web Services. So we think that there's a tremendous opportunity for us to apply some of our learning, some of the software that we've built up over the years, turn them into SaaS offerings, and even enter new markets as we can identify what those markets might be. So it's very exciting. But we're not going to be a cloud service provider ourselves. Don't look for Accenture to start building data centers like Amazon does, because that's not core. Amazon does it much better. And there are companies that do it much better than us. So we're not going to be getting that space. And we're not going to compete in the generic SaaS market either. There's plenty of companies that do that very, very well. So I think there's plenty of opportunities for a company like Accenture to leverage cloud very intelligently and really bring that full weight of the innovation of our company to bear on our clients. But what's the catch? So let's talk about some of the challenges that we see out there. I think the first one that was mentioned was security and compliance. Most people mention security in the context of, oh, it's the cloud, it can't be secure. And I think that's a red herring, to use another English term. It's a falsehood. I'm going to try to get Martin to answer this question. I know he's not going to, but I'm going to try. How many servers does Amazon have right now? A lot? Enough. Google has 1 million or more, depending on who you believe. Facebook, hundreds of thousands. Amazon, hundreds of thousands. Somebody that runs a set of infrastructure that large, with fairly few people, relatively speaking, knows what they're doing about security. Probably better than most enterprises do. So security is not the big issue in my mind in terms of cloud computing. There will be security challenges. There always will be. That's just the fact of the matter. We'll hear about something, maybe it's fair or not, that's labeled as a cloud security breach, and we'll deal with it. I think that the bigger challenges that we'll see out there is compliance and trying to, particularly for global companies, trying to address a patchwork of privacy regulations, personally identifiable data regulations around the world. It's not a very harmonized regulatory environment out there, and that just makes it challenging to come up, particularly with global applications. The cloud service providers are taking steps to provide some sort of localization, but it still is going to be a challenge for many enterprises that want to have global applications to figure out the right balance between adherence to the regulatory regime and taking advantage of cloud. So that's one of the challenges that we see out there. I think software licensing is one of these hidden challenges out there that's somewhat maybe overlooked. Until very recently, if I wanted to launch certain types of operating systems on Amazon, I had to pay additional for licensing of that software, which was a problem for me at Accenture because I already own an unlimited license to that software, and paying double sort of kills the business case for that particular application. And this is not necessarily a cloud phenomena, but software companies being able to adjust their licensing schemes to be as elastic as the underlying infrastructure, I think, is a challenge that we're going to face. And when you have a licensing scheme that's predicated on the old way of doing things, buying servers, having individual people who are using that software on a continuous basis, and moving to a basis where I might want to rent a piece of software for a couple hours and never use it again. That's a challenge. Now, even companies like Microsoft have stated that they think it's broken. They're working to fix it. Other companies are working to fix it as well, but there's also a certain amount of that classic FUD out there. And when you have a massive set of software salespeople out there whose livelihood is depending on a certain licensing scheme, you can bet there's going to be resistance to that. We'll deal with it. Performance, these applications are accessible over the internet. It doesn't mean that that's bad. It just means for certain applications, cloud might not be the ideal choice straight away. As we evolve our understanding of how to build applications on cloud, as we evolve the types of applications we can build, this will lessen up. But right now, if you're trying to build an application that's talking to applications inside your data center to the cloud and expecting real-time performance and sub-second latencies, you might want to rethink that approach. We'll fix it over time. I actually think that an evolving approach for this will be massive clusters of different cloud computing providers located relatively close to one another and be able to put applications along with co-location facilities very close to each other and break that latency challenge. Vendor lock-in, this is a very real fear for many of our enterprise customers. As good as Amazon is, there's only one of them. There's no alternative. There's no way to run Amazon apps inside your data center yet. There will be soon, right? Companies such as VMware are trying to introduce more proprietary solutions to allow you to run apps inside and outside the cloud. But it is a challenge for many CIOs because they don't want to get into a situation where they're only a single source provider or they can't pull stuff back in. This is a minor challenge. It's something we're going to work through. And as we build these new applications that take advantage of cloud services and other entrants come into the market, this problem will fade over time. But right now, it's seen as an issue. And then finally, and this is one that I've been personally experiencing in a most painful fashion, is this whole notion of terms and conditions, liability, indemnification of loss, that sort of thing. Cloud service providers, by definition, have to be able to support hundreds of thousands of customers across different geographies, across different industries, and they have to do this in a very frictionless basis. The click-through agreement for somebody like Amazon is a joy to read. You don't need a legal degree to do it, and you can do it inside of one cup of coffee, which is great. But enterprise lawyers, they have very strange reactions to that type of agreement. They like to see things like indemnification and compensation for loss. And when you start looking at that in the terms of, say, like a reseller or a hoster, it just introduces a challenge right now. And it's something that we're working through right now with the various cloud service providers, understanding what the right balance of a contractual arrangement is with the flexibility and the cost just advantages you have from taking cloud. So maybe a question for everybody to consider. We all like to avoid risk as much as possible, but if you could deliver an enterprise IT service at 1/10 of the cost or 5% of the cost, how much risk are you willing to take to get that? And it's an interesting question. A lot of my clients are asking themselves right now. It's breaking the established paradigm of we're going to engineer failure out of the system with dealing with it and figuring out how to move on in the face of failure, which is, I think, is one of the underlooked benefits of cloud computing. The guys at Amazon and others, they build stuff at such a massive scale that they're always dealing with failure at some sort of level, and yet business keep marching on. And I think there's a good lesson to be heard from there. So I have some guiding principles for cloud computing. I do think that this is going to be a major component of your IT strategy. I don't think the internal data center is going to go away anytime soon. There's plenty of legacy applications that have withstood multiple attempts of replatforming and people getting rid of them, and they're going to stay. But you need to factor in how you're going to adopt cloud computing into your IT management strategy. I don't think there's going to be a single approach for a while. The market is going to remain fragmented. There's going to be lots of options out there, lots of providers that you can deal with. I will say as a cautionary note that many of the applications that have been built up in the enterprise have been built to vertically scale, to be fault resistant, to build on very large scale databases, and there's other ways to do it. Other ways you can build applications in the cloud that are much more elastic, much more scalable, much larger data sets. And I think for just maybe something to take back to your programming teams and your IT folks is start exploring new ways to build applications. I do think there's an asymmetrical cost in cloud at the moment. You can do lots of stuff very cheaply, but once you're in, it may be a little more expensive to get out, so just plan carefully. To sum it all up though, don't wait. Pick an application, get going. As Martin said, start with dev and test. Start with something unthreatening, something friendly, something that you can wrap your arms around, and start trying it out. Figure out what you can do. Figure out what you could do differently. We're starting to see so many companies out there acting like much larger companies because they have access to these compute resources that they couldn't have done 5 years ago. So to sum up, from my perspective, there's a lot of promise out there. You just have to start, because to wait is going to invite everyone else and your competitors to take an advantage of and ahead of you. So with that, I'll finish up and turn it back. Thank you.